Hi, everybody. Why is it that so many people find it hard to say no to watching just one more episode of their favorite Netflix series? 10 years ago, TV was different. Shows aired once or twice a week, unless you were lucky enough to catch a marathon. If you were fancy, you may have even purchased a series box set. Soon, recording shows and online streaming became options. But in time, Netflix has become the most favored option. For only $8 a month, thousands of shows available at your leisure on your phone, iPad, computer, or TV. But is this ease of access always beneficial, or is the answer more complicated than that? University is difficult, and for many students, Netflix study breaks is an important part of their day. When I take a Netflix study break, I imagine I might end up looking like this. But more often than not, I lack control and I end up binging for several hours on end, sometimes even into the late AM. When Netflix asks me, would you like to watch another episode? That is such an uncomfortable question to answer. I find it so difficult to say no. And apparently I'm not alone with my binge-watching tendencies, as binge-watching represents a radical shift for 21st century media consumption. And so, today, my question is, what psychological mechanism can account for this binge-watching behavior? So just to poll the room, how many people here have ever felt kind of uncomfortable or anxious after watching one of your favorite shows? Okay, lots of people. This is an example of withdrawal, which is caused by a physiological compensatory response that counteracts the effects that watching TV has on your body. And this is an example of classical conditioning. Now, to explain this a little bit further, with classical conditioning, an unconditional stimulus will unconditionally predict the presence of the unconditional response. The unconditional stimulus in our example is the act of watching Netflix and how it makes you feel. So, relaxed, happy, excited. The unconditional response is opposite to the unconditional stimulus to bring your body's levels back down to baseline. In classical conditioning, a conditional stimulus comes to reliably predict the unconditional stimulus by being paired in both temporal and spatial proximity to it until a contingency is formed. The conditional stimulus in our example is the environment in which you are watching Netflix. So this could be your bed, your comfy blanket, or the library in which you're taking a Netflix study break. A conditional stimulus will also predict a conditional response, which is exactly the same as the unconditional response. And this is conditional upon the formation of this contingency. The purpose that this response serves is to prime your body to start reacting before the unconditional stimulus even arrives. Now, what happens when the TV show ends? The unconditional stimulus is no longer present, and neither is the unconditional response. But because this contingency is still valid, and the conditional stimulus is still there, all those cues are still there, the compensatory response is still elicited, and now it has nothing to balance itself against, and you feel withdrawal. Now, how can this cause you to binge watch? Well, one study shows that while you're watching TV, your relaxation levels increase. But immediately following the end of the TV show, your relaxation levels decrease. And this actually led participants to watch more TV, feeding into a positive feedback loop that ultimately increases their binge-watching behavior in time. So what is the solution to this problem? Break contingency, such that when the show ends, those cues no longer will elicit a CR. And instead of feeling withdrawal, you feel content with your TV watching experience, happy that you've watched your show, and totally fine with stopping. So even though watching Netflix kind of feels like you're a kid in a candy shop with seemingly limitless shows to choose from, there are methods that exist to break contingency and maintain control of your watching behavior. So how could a university student do this? To break the spatial component of contingency formation, a university student could choose to study and thereby take their study breaks at varying libraries across McMaster campus. To break this temporal component of contingency formation, they could also choose to study at varying times of the day. As an additional precaution, they could also go into their Netflix settings and uncheck this box so that Netflix will no longer prompt you to watch one more episode. In combination, these methods should eliminate any binge-watching tendencies you might have had before this talk And hopefully that uncomfortable feeling that led you to watch just one more episode will long be forgotten the next time you finish watching one of your favorite Netflix shows. Thank you everyone for listening to my talk today, and thank you Dr. Kim and Amy Pache for providing me with this opportunity to share my ideas.